Got a nice guest today, top of the heap. But before we introduce him, I want to just say something that's connected with what we're going to talk about. And that is, I think some subjects are redundant. Looking back in schools, growing up. I mean, physics, I hated physics. The worst subject ever, I thought, personally. I mean, refraction, reflection, nuclear fission, fusion. Who remembers that? I mean, you heard those words and I would, immediately start feeling dizzy and faint. And I'm not the only one. So I think we have to look at education again. And at the primary level, just sort of keep the 3 or 4 interesting subjects. And then as they get older and people show interest, then get into science and things like that. Because for people like me, and that's 80% of the world, I mean, we're duffers. We're just not interested. Having said that, the gentleman who's coming on here is far from duffer. He's the opposite of that. He's a super achiever, entrepreneur of the year, still has a full shock of hair, although he's a couple of years younger than me. I just checked the biodata as well. His name is Siddharth Roy Kapur, one of the big names in Bollywood, or more than Bollywood, in cinema in general. And he's giving us a new, a series called Rocket Boys. So I initially thought that it was about Elton John, but apparently that's Rocket Man, like the song says. So that was wrong. Let's bring him on. Siddharth, please. Sorry to drag you out. You're in middle of, promoting and all the problems of marketing and all that you have last minute. And then we insisted you come. And I'm sorry I had to use your, call your mom and, use my influence and things like that to get you to actually attend the call.
Always
and I won't do that again. But yeah, so this show that we're doing, we want to talk about you actually a lot, but we have to also, not have to, but it's only meat that we discuss Rocket Boys. Which is, when I think about it, because Rocket Boys is, for those who don't know, the story of Homi Bhabha and Vikram Sarabhai. And considering that, two of the great legendary names in academia and science, etc., tech, if you like, nothing really known of them, not in the pop world, never celebrated. That firstly is really odd. And so I want to start, where did the idea come from?
So I think you're absolutely right when you say that the idea of doing a show on two scientists sounds like the most boring thing you could ever, like sort of embark on. But the idea came to us from Abhay Korane, this smart young writer who came in one day and said that, he sort of pitched us a show on Homi Bhabha and Vikram Sarabhai. And what I had no idea about, despite having obviously studied a little bit about them in school, and you generally know that they were two greats, etc.
And then one was a Bhabha.
And then one was a Bhabha. Their lives were so intertwined. They actually were like a mentor and mentee. They had this incredibly close personal relationship. They went through, loves and losses and failures and successes. And they had a different philosophy for the way that the nation should go. So Homi Bhabha believed in the use of atomic energy in order to be able to arm ourselves. And Vikram Sarabhai believed that actually we should be a peaceful nation, following on from the way that we got our independence. And that should be used only for peaceful purposes. And they were both patriots, but they sort of differed on that one philosophical way of where India should go. And Homi was this flamboyant Renaissance man. He loved Western classical music. He played the violin. He enjoyed the opera. And Vikram was, gracious and dignified and much more controlled and a more somber, guy with a scientific temperament. So really,
saying loving the opera, being flamboyant is bad.
Flamboyant is great, Cyrus. Who's a better example of that than you?
Yeah, and I have the scientific bent of mind as well. Right. But what a fascinating thing then you guys have got on, because again, I didn't want to say, but you said it yourself. You would think that two scientists' stories, barring the great Einstein with that shock of hair and whatever the look, generally is something that academia would like, or you have a scientific bent of mind, and then from that point of view, you get interested in the subject. But the way you set it up right now, I'm already intrigued. Because firstly, the philosophical difference is huge. If you're saying one is sort of pro-aggressive use of nuclear, arsenal or nuclear stuff, and one is absolutely against it, which is not a simple divide. That's a very big. It's almost like opposition versus the government in a sense. So, and yet remaining friends, and then the humanizing side of all that.
And basically, it was a time when people would differ about a philosophical point rather than a personal one, and have these incredible debates about that. Versus today, where it's much more sort of tutu meme about, you can't imagine differing on a philosophical point with someone and breaking a friendship because of that. But I guess what we wanted to do also was show them with all their flaws and eccentricities as well. So now in retrospect, they are greats and they were icons of modern India and built us and sort of built our nation as we know it today. But they were just men of their time, and they were just men with flaws and eccentricities and loves and losses, and they made mistakes. So the idea really was not to treat them with the perspective of greatness that we have about them today. They were a 30-year-old and a 25-year-old just going through life at the time that they met.
Yeah, for me, I think that's really spot on, because the whole point of all these exercises we do with great people from the past is that we put them on some pedestal and then nobody can understand who they were. The fact of the matter is, when you start telling us about all their so-called flaws, more than flaws, just their ordinariness also,
Yeah.
so that you can relate to the ordinariness. It's almost like you or your friends or whatever. And then out of that comes this genius to, build, to create, to launch, to have visions, etc. So I'm already fascinated. You won me over.
And that actually makes you realize that actually makes their greatness even greater, because you realize that they're people like you and me, except their mind just worked faster. They just made connections that maybe we can't make. They were able to see things that we can't, but they were human beings in flesh and blood, and made mistakes too.
Siddharth, don't put yourself down. I think they'll make a movie about you and me as well one day, similar to this. And, and it'll be the same thing. Your achievements will be on one side, but your normal, the humanity of you will come out. The fact that you like to play with your dog or shampoo your hair. I mean, why not know that? It's important. Always go back to Shimon Bolivar, Gabriel Garcia Marquez's General in the Labyrinth, which is a huge example. I think he got really criticized for showing the great revolutionary general of South America as a short fat guy who farted at night and was a womanizer and this and that and had a bad breath, but but against that he built a whole continent, which is the beauty of the whole thing, what you're showing us, that this guy also was that guy.
Exactly.
Which in India, with our sacred cow, forgive the metaphor, theories in life, everybody's got to be perfect marriage, perfect with their parents, perfect with their neighbors. It's all bull. People suck. Indians suck, Siddharth. Say it with me. Indians suck. Okay, don't say that. Never say that. You're trying to sell the program here. Yeah. All right. So that's the premise. But let's go a little bit into the series and give us a little idea for those, without giving away obviously the story. Where does it start? It starts from them as even younger men before science.
It starts before independence, at a time when Homi is a lecturer in a university in Calcutta. And Vikram is finishing off his time at Cambridge, and the Second World War hits, and he has to come back, to India. And they meet at that point of time. So it starts before independence, around 42, and the first season ends in 62, and then the second season is from 62 to 74. So it pretty much spans 4 decades across their entire lives, pretty much.
And they remain sort of partners in that sense, work-wise. They remain connected, or they do their own thing and.
They did. So like all sort of, like tumultuous friendships, they had times when the friendship broke and then it came back together again. And, when they were sort of out of touch with each other and then came back, like sort of feverishly back in touch. So, I mean, they were passionate men, and they sort of believed in what they espoused and they lived by it. So it sort of covers that entire journey.
Yeah, I also think now you guys are making films which are global. Let's face it. I mean, I'm thinking if I'm some kid in Korea, it might interest me to see this subject, because it's a human story. At the end of the day, it's about two men and their lives and how they were parallel sort of lives, but yet they had their own distinct color and flavor, etc. So I think that's also maybe for the next generation that's important.
No, it's great. And the way the story is told is because we as Indians know so little about them anyway. For someone in Korea as well, the setup is enough for them to understand what these men are about and why they're significant, because we had to tell the story for our own audience in that.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I'm very glad. This is where I feel that jingoism is not misplaced, rather patriotism. When you have films like this, I feel you're doing more for the country, in a sense, furthering the brand than a lot of other things. I don't want to mention statues, but there's so many other stupid things that are done which make no sense. But I do believe that this is somewhere where you connect globally with a lot of people. But it's a good way for brand India to be exposed. I think it does much more to get people interested in our country, our people, our things. And then again, the commonality that globally you have with great people at the end of the day, from whichever culture, race, nationality, etc.
And I think if you can be patriotic without being nationalistic or jingoistic and chest thumping,
well done.
Then you're able to actually translate.
Then you're in another country.
Yeah.
No. But I think, listen, hats off to you guys. I really like that. I think you've taken two guys who have not been celebrated enough, who are the real deal. This is, thoroughbreds completely. They represent the human race above everything else, and they represent this country. And and everything that came with the young India, which we have today, or the dynamism and progress, etc. But it came with these guys initially. The ones who showed were entrepreneurs and scientific minds we did have. Not me, but them in general. Now let's get to the hard questions that any journalist should ask producers such as yourself. First one being, why Jim Sarbh? Why did you choose him, and why not John Abraham?
Yeah, Jim was almost like it was a given that we were going to cast Jim. He's a superb actor. And, Homi was this flamboyant, character, as I said. He was the life of a party. He was irreverent. He was, he was a real character in many ways. And Jim happens to be like that in real life too. And he's a great actor. So it just felt just really natural for him to be Homi.
So he's like Homi Bhabha without the genius. Everything else is there. Is what I'm saying.
if you were 25 years younger, Cyrus, it would have been you.
Too late, brother. I could have played his friend. There was another third friend, a small cog in the wheel. Tell us about Vikram Sarabhai and me.
So actually Ishwak Singh, really good actor.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So he was in Patal Lok, and Vikram had, like I was saying, a certain grace and dignity and a quiet, quiet resolve to him. And, Ishwak really was able to, his role in Patal Lok was such where he was gracious and strong at the same time. And that's what we wanted for Vikram. And these two characters then really play off each other beautifully because they're so contrasting that to see them sort of butt heads was really interesting.
It's a big question, right? Do partnerships endure because of commonality, birds of a feather, or do they endure because of quite the opposite? And these appear to be in personality, of course, not obviously in subject, but in personality they were quite the opposite, and it sort of endured because of that. He's loud, raucous, if you like, for the life of the party. Vikram is the guy you don't notice and will speak only when he's spoken to, sort of thing, but it still seems to work.
Yeah, and I mean, it's almost like they were able to find a sort of a kindred soul in each other because they were obviously smarter than anyone else in the room. So they were able to relate to each other probably because of that, because it can get pretty lonely, I guess, if you're a genius. And the fact that you find another fellow genius, however disparate his personality might be. I mean, you know, Cyrus, you experience it.
So painful. So, yeah. I often call your brother and we talk about it all the time, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Listen, I want to just get through. There's a lot of credits that are given here before. I want to talk about you as much as we can as well, because, your body of work is huge, brother, huge, as if you don't know. But so Nikhil Advani, then there's MA Entertainment, there's Abhay Pannu is the director. So who all are behind this picture?
As I said,
series.
So when we got the story from Abhay Korane, I've been discussing for a long time with Nikhil about collaborating on something because he's a creator who's really prolific and he's able to understand different genres and work across multiple genres. And when I spoke to him about
he's a South Bombay boy, so thoda education hai.
Bombay boy, so that helps. So he got super excited about it, and he'd done a lot of research on the space program and for something else that he was working on. And Abhay Pannu is actually a first-time writer-director. He's done just an incredible job. He dived into the research. He read pretty much every book on these men. And
does he have a science background?
He doesn't actually, which was really interesting. I mean, he's a film buff and he's a film boy. So in that sense, he had no, But then he met the Sarabhai family, and actually Malika Sarabhai was really generous with her time. Was sort of allowed us to take the dramatic liberties that we took. With regard to the way that we portrayed her father, and she just saw the whole show 4 days ago and just loved it. So Abhay spent a lot of time with them as well. So it's Nikhil and like sort of MA Entertainment, and Abhay is the writer and director.
No, but kudos to Abhay then, because the germ comes from him, right? The fact that he figured this out, which is actually gold, but nobody thought of it before.
Yeah,
that the idea is fantastic.
So there are two Abhays here. There's an Abhay Korane who came to us with the story, and then there's Abhay. And then there's Abhay Pannu, who's the writer-director.
So where did Abhay Purane go after that?
Well, he actually had to work on some other projects, but he shared the idea with us and he was happy for us to develop it and take it forward.
Note to self, the next show will be on the two Abhays, because that's another interesting partnership. And then the other Abhay takes over, and almost like a rocket metaphor, and takes it forward, etc. Why Rocket Boys? Nice title, but gives us a slightly, almost irreverent feel. The choice Rocket Boys?
So that was exactly the idea. The idea was to not treat these guys with a perspective of greatness that we were just discussing, that we treat our great men with. They were just two men, two brilliant men of their time who were literally boys when they came. I mean, and doing all that they did in life came from this passion as children to, to be up in space and to do something, related to rockets and related to outer space. And that's where it came from. So we wanted to be irreverent in the way that we projected the show.
And I'm presuming a lot of the dialogue would be in Gujarati, if they both are fluent in the language.
There's some dialogue in Gujarati. There's some Parsi Gujarati and there's some Gujarati.
Let's not get into that distinguish. I mean, let's not polarize this country furthermore. What kind of accent in your Gujarati? Yeah. Okay. Siddharth, we need to talk about you, and we'll get Silvery in and then go back to the film as well. Series. It releases on, let me just tell you, since I have it here somewhere. 4th of Feb. And please go and check it out immediately. That's season 1 on the 4th of Feb. We'll come back to it. But now let's talk about a man born on the 2nd of August, 1974, India's pride and joy, Siddharth Roy Kapur of Cuff Parade and English theatre, who then went on to carve a lot of fame in the world. Well, it didn't start like that. It started actually at Procter & Gamble.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
What the hell? Take us back to your beginning.
It started with big Vikram and Ariel washing powder. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
In brand management.
Okay. In brand management. Yeah, so I mean, I did my MBA at Bajaj, and then I joined P&G out of there. I guess the idea was to get some stability in life because I had a fairly tumultuous childhood, in that sense, which was not very stable, like sort of financially. So I guess the idea really was to get financial stability. And but I think I very quickly realized that cold remedies and washing powder was not my thing. And so then Star TV happened quite fast after that. And
not that it's a bad thing for those who are working in client service.
It's a great thing, and there were incredible people I worked with at P&G. It's just that it wasn't for me. I mean, I guess I need to be passionate about the thing I'm selling. There's some people who get a kick out of marketing, and they could be marketing anything, and it doesn't matter what they're marketing, but they're just great marketers. I wasn't. I needed to feel for what it was.
How can you say that? You marketed yourself in so many different films, and some of them with very little going for them and low budgets as well, into big successes. That's a lie. But I think the creative side of yours needed more fulfillment that the ad world could not perhaps give you, and that's the reason. So then we go to Star TV, and you go to Hong Kong.
Yeah. So I spent 3 years in Hong Kong. Great fun times. But I stayed in touch with Ronnie through the years because I'd done this summer internship at UTV back when I was in, college. And I'd been quite, enamored by the way that Ronnie was running it. And there was this whole adrenaline in that small company at that point of time. And he'd grown, obviously, over the years. And I stayed in touch with him, and he said, I'm launching a movie studio pretty much back in 2004 or 5. And you want to come here and run sort of marketing for us? And I was literally on the next flight back to Bombay from Hong Kong. And that's where it sort of began.
But just a quick about Hong Kong, being there away from India, etc. You think that shaped you a little bit? Not necessarily creatively, but I'm saying in every other way.
I think it did. Because, I mean, I lived at home pretty much all through before that, and in a bustling family with 2 younger brothers and 3 grandparents at home and 2 parents and a dog and 2 turtles. So it was a pretty and then to leave the nest, so to speak, was. I mean, it changes you. It changes you for sure. So I was sort of out of the country for 5 years, 3 years in Hong Kong and 2 in Dubai. And but I was itching to come back. I mean, here's where I thought the action was. So.
Also, I'm just thinking, so Ronnie and you could be the next, great bromance in a sense, or mentor and mentee, exactly how you describe these two. So I may be making that series one day. How ironic would that be? Ironic is the right word, karmic, I would think. So take us through what happens next. So you guys were on the cusp. I suppose it's difficult to, blow your own trumpet in a sense, but literally you were on the cusp with Ronnie as the first sort of independent vision that was coming out of India in a sense, away from the family structures of our feature films, etc. But didn't just start like that. In the early days, what happened? What did you do?
So Ronnie had this vision for what he wanted to do. I mean, he wanted to to have a professionally run studio model, right? And like you said, I mean, he wasn't to the manor born. He was, he was literally from South Bombay himself, having done theatre all his life and then gotten into TV and worked his way up. And it wasn't easy for him to break into what is quite a rarefied and pretty
I would
incestuous.
say if somebody told me 30 years ago, it would have been impossible, I would think. Like
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah,
Who he is, who you are, and then going into that business and taking
yeah.
over.
No, so I mean, full marks to him for even thinking for having that ambition and being able to do it. And I was just happy to be along for the ride.
Maybe he just hated Hindi films and he just had enough.
That's probably it.
Yeah.
He was like, I need to make these myself now.
Yeah, right. But just take us, I know it's a difficult question to answer in a few seconds and all that, but take us in the early steps. What did you exactly do? We started hearing more and more about UTV, about you. Your name started coming up. People started talking about you as this guy, he's got the touch, etc. But before that, what was the first baby steps that you guys took?
So, when I joined UTV, Ronnie had greenlit a few movies. He greenlit Rang De Basanti, and it was in the shoot process at that point of time. And I think the strategy at that time was to, work with directors who were young and hungry, and it probably had a couple of movies that maybe hadn't worked, but that's just the way that the industry is, and had a point to prove. And, because going the actor route was not really an option because we didn't have the relationships in the industry to go down that route. So the writer-director route was a more sensible route to take. And Rakesh Mehra had made Urks, before that, which hadn't worked, unfortunately, but he was a super talent. And so I think Ronnie saw that in him, saw the script of Rang De Basanti, felt it was something that if it didn't work, it would be a sort of, one of those things where you've gone all the way and you've just fallen off the cliff and it hasn't worked in big deal, but you tried. But the fact is that it worked, and it worked like gangbusters. And then you had a Khosla Ka Ghosla in the same year, which was this intimate small film that had been just left in the cans for years. No one had picked it up.
Many years before that. And
many years. I mean, we saw a print at Famous Studio. It was a completely scratch print, and you could tell that it had been seen by pretty much
fabulous film.
Industry, and such a lovely film. And then the idea was really to take these movies and to market the hell out of them to show that we actually could get behind the movies that we backed. And they both happened in 2006, and I think that's when the journey really began.
This is from the man who says he doesn't like marketing and said goodbye to Wix. There you go.
I enjoy marketing things I'm passionate about. So yeah.
Fair enough. But no, I'm just trying to squeeze an answer out of you. I know it's an unfair answer, but do you think you guys, both you and Ronnie first and now very much you, is there a way to know how films work? Because everybody talks about the maths of films in a sense, and you guys just seem to be able. Now, how did he know the Rang De Basanti would work, for example? And looking at the record, it's a very good one. And I'm talking about when you back things against the grain from left field, smaller sort of writer producers, if you like, whatever. But it seems to be a science to it, and you have cracked it. So again, an awkward question, but do you think there's something to that, or just a romance and a gamble?
I don't think so, Cyrus. There's no science to it, and you know that as well as I do. There's really no science to it. It really boils down to that instinctive gut reaction that you have to something, and all you have to go with in this business is your gut, right? So you just got to go with it. And if you happen to have a gut that that's a good gut, then you can
why bring up the gut, even in a metaphor, unnecessarily depress all of us. So let's fast forward a bit because we're trying to get in as much as we can. Then you guys, of course, make all these big films. I don't want to mention each and every one of them. They're all household names. We go straight into the fact that then you take over Disney. He takes off and you take over Disney, and you're basically running the biggest communication center of the universe, in a sense, in India, which is the upcoming center of the universe in terms of communication. So just how did that happen? And tell us a little bit about those
Disney
days.
bought UTV, and so Ronnie ran it for a couple of years, and then he decided to go back to what he does best, which is being an entrepreneur and doing 500 different things at the same time, and sort of the startup world, etc. And then I sort of took over from him. And it was a great experience. I mean, as you said, if there's one media company in the world that you want to learn from, then it's Disney. And I had that opportunity to do so. It was really great fun. We were able to do Beauty and the Beast in India, which was lovely. And to actually do a full-on Indian local production with the backing, obviously, of the folks from Broadway was very, very fulfilling. The last film I did there, actually, Dangal, was a great note on which to leave, because I'd sort of decided in my third year of being MD that was going to be my last year, and I wanted to start off on my own journey. And
if I may just interject there, Men in Langots has always been your dream to have these running around on a mud path, hitting each other. So that was also going to be fun. But then again, that's another example again of a sense of a sensibility that you seem to have to pick the film. I know we had Amir Khan, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a super hit.
So there was a really, really smart girl in our creative team. Her name is Divya Rao, who read this article on the Fogart sisters and in the Times of India, these two wrestling sisters, and came to us and said that this is a story that's really interesting. So we said, okay, fine. So why don't you go and meet the family? And she went to Haryana and met the family, and she said, you know what? It's actually about the father, because he was a failed wrestler. And he thought he'd live out his dream through his sons. And then he had 4 girls in a row and he gave up on it. And then realized that, no, actually, I mean, in that patriarchal, Haryanvi small, village.
Can't get better than that, yeah.
He realized he could live his dream through his daughters. And so it's really his story. So that's where the germ of the idea came in. And then we got Nitesh Tiwari on board and he wrote a fabulous script, went to Amir and he came on board after that. But yeah, I mean, it can come from these ideas can come from anywhere.
Yeah, but what you're telling us is the geniuses are out there, Divya and Abhez, quietly get rid of them. So we can cover the credit after that. Yeah. But I think that's the whole thing here, that you guys were able to find and listen to the right people at the right time, where we already had a system perhaps in place where just 5 people would make decisions for everybody. But I think with Ronnie and then you, the whole idea of opening that market up and listening to that's why different ideas have come in. And that's why today we're talking about Rocket Boys, which again, I'm thinking 20 years ago, perhaps nobody would want to make the film thinking, boss, you're both boring subject here. I'm just thinking, what item number can we give them? I'm okay. So they're at a party, one likes classical music, the other one doesn't want to talk. I mean, suddenly, Malaika's dancing in the middle and no one can explain why. So I think that would have been a challenge creatively. Now we come to but I'm looking back at the Siddharth Roy Kapur story, which is it's very interesting. And it's almost very step by step. Literally, you've gone, I mean, if people in marketing want to study the journey, I mean, literally started in an advertising sort of managerial sort of firm, go to Hong Kong, learn the ropes outside where there's no influence or network happening. So it seasons you, if not creatively in every other way. Yes. Then you meet this guy who's your mentor in many ways. Let's face it, one of the greats of Indian business and acumen, etc. And then he mentors you, and then you become him in a sense, if I dare say so. And you take it further. You've got all these things going for you. You run the biggest media house in the world. And then you decide to branch out on your own and, start Roy Kapur films. Why not Siddharth Roy Kapur films?
It was just too long.
But it would sound like composers of today, no? Shankar S.
And the problem is that my initials have already been taken, yeah. So,
it's got a lot of gravitas and all. If your name comes out, and you have to say it I'm thinking as an anchor, and you've been an anchor yourself, you can remember that. It's a good name to say. It's got that 3, like Michael J. Fox,
Sean Lennon. SRK films, and then you know what that would be. So, I mean,
I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Ouch, libel coming your way, bro. Are they making any pictures on Parsi scientists? Where the hell are the Parsi scientists in those pictures? Not there yet. So then, I mean, this is almost like, so the steps seem to make a lot of sense. So finally, the entrepreneur is himself, working for himself and doing his own thing. So when did that happen? The decision to
that happened pretty much in 2017 is when that kicked off, and it was a couple of years of work on developing, because it takes time. It takes time to write a series. It takes time to write a film. So I had to be quite patient in those first few years, because when you're used to a certain level of activity and then suddenly you're just waiting around for a writer to come back with a treatment and sort of twiddling your thumbs, it can require some amount of zen. But those first few years were really spent in development. And now is when it's all sort of kicking off in terms of the content coming through.
So I can't make up my mind here, and forgive me for asking this, whether, you're just so sure of yourself that you make these steps at the right time. You look at all the steps you've taken, if you ever reflect or want to think about your career so far, or you take a chance. It could be either, I know. You leave Hong Kong, you're taking a chance. Even he didn't know what he was doing, to be honest. I mean, or what the future would bring. Yeah. So you've taken chances, or you're cocksure that these are the right chances? I don't know what the right.
There's no way of being cocksure. There's really no way of being cocksure. I think I wanted to be involved in the movie business since I was a kid. It was just one of those. I mean, I'd read every film magazine that was available. I'd watch every film. I'd drag my nani and my nana and my poor nana didn't understand Hindi. I'd take him to see Sholay every month. It was crazy. So it was just one of those things where But there was no way in a structured way for someone of our background to be able to get into the movie business, right? It just wasn't a thing at that time. So when the opportunity sort of presented itself and when it was someone like Ronnie doing it, I knew it's going to be done in a certain manner that I'm going to be comfortable with. I'll feel at home in that environment, while at the same time, we'll be able to go out there and do something special. And what's the worst that'll happen? It won't work, And then in my time at Disney, I have to say, I guess it was just a natural transition, because those 3 years as the MD of Disney, I think made me realize that my heart really lay in the content creation part of what we were doing. I mean, we were doing consumer products and we were doing TV broadcasting and we were doing interactive, and I do all those things, but my heart would really beat faster when I was in the Beauty and the Beast meetings and when I was in the meetings to do with the next slate of movies. And that sort of tells you that you're not a media executive, you enjoy content creation. So it just felt natural.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that right from the start, it just looks like the path. You say Siddharth Roy Kapur and this and that, but when you think about it, it does sound filmy. The name is, it. I mean, if I was to rename a guy and say, you're going to be the next actor, and his name is say Rajesh Sharma, I'm saying that wo to nahi chalega. Siddharth Roy Kapur. Don't you think it does sound like? And now again, all 3 brothers are in the business. So in a sense, it's a probably a very common name. I remember, I think I was at some event in a college before the pandemic, and some kids were performing, and the voiceover was, Siddharth Roy Kapur presents, or something. They put your name in. So, when you become part of the sort of the pop culture in that sense, you're finished. You are now Bollywood, whether you like it or not. So you better make good stuff. And then thank God you are. A quick word as we go on. You guys were shooting during the pandemic. The actual challenge. So how did that go? Because
it was tough. I mean, it was pretty tough. It was tough because it's a period piece. You've got lots of junior artists. You've got a big crew. You've got. It's a pretty big production in that sense. And we were shooting 2 seasons together, so literally 16 episodes at one go. So the planning was quite meticulous, and then that all goes out the window because you've got to go into lockdown. So.
One guy did not cooperate on that set or something like that. I'm just thinking of you guys have nightmares on a set. I can imagine on a normal day. Shooting a series, magnify that by 20. Okay, exactly. Shooting extra artists, magnify that by 20. Then we give you COVID part 1, part 2, and part 3. And center not talking or aligning themselves either. I'm sorry, there's a Parsi dog in the background who's going bad, but you can't hit animals. I was hitting my wife. I would never do that. You must never hit women. Okay, but if you had to choose, Siddharth, I'm just putting it out there. Put it out there and tell us what you would choose. All right. Lots more to talk about. We'll take a quick break while I stop this sound. He can't hear anything you're saying.
Hi.
He's saying hi.
I know, but I can't see now.
Now he's making films about famous people with minds. So there's no chance now. If we had caught him 5 years earlier in Disney, there was Beauty and the Beast. You and I could have auditioned. Yeah. Anybody else calls you Beast, maybe I'll smack them. I won't allow that. I won't allow that. Sorry, Sid, in the middle this happens. This is what the COVID has done. There's no professionalism left. My mom's coming in soon in 5 minutes. Producer. Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll bring Silvery in. Lots more to talk about with Siddharth Roy Kapur. The film is called Rocket. The series, more on, is called Rocket Boys. We'll be launching very soon, 4th of Feb. Here's our break. This is the best part of the show. Here we are.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet talks to founders Dinesh and Vivek about the path-breaking changes their AR edugaming startup Play Shifu has brought about. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita talk to communications consultant Karthik Srinivasan. He shares his insights on brand stories, woke culture, and regional content. On Cyrus Says, a cock and bull episode with ex-producers Naveen Narona and Abbas Momin. Cyrus asked if they ever participated in a fancy dress competition. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila Institute folks discuss the importance of digital equity in achieving true progress. And on Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav gives us tips to be mindful of before seeking a mentor. Also, just one quick announcement for everybody. Would like you to check out the new version of our Android app. It's available on the Play Store. It's a really interesting take on how to listen to podcasts. Do give it a look and let us know what you think. We're open to feedback on all of our social media channels. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Word of mouth really does help. And don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. And we have a number of channels there at ivmpodcast.com/YouTube where you can take a look at them. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hello. Hi, Siddharth.
He's not impressed. This man has gone from Kapur to Hong Kong, then to but that wasn't bad. He had to go to Lokhandwala and places like that. Well, you were still living at home for some time, weren't you?
I was living at home. I was going to Vikhroli, to the Godrej Soaps factory in Vikhroli when I was at PhD. So yeah.
My God. I mean, those were the days when I went through that, just the fact that you commuted and there's something wrong. There's something wrong with what you've done in your life. Because you've been brought up for something else, and then you're going in another direction every day, and nobody else is.
My mom would give me a mask. My mom would give me a mask at that time because I had to go from Andheri West to Sakinaka in a rig. So she was like, wear a mask. It's dusty in the suburbs and all.
It's like racism we have called geographicism, which the elite of South Bombay have. Yeah. And Sakinaka has the worst name, Silvery. I don't know if you're aware of worst name. A mother's nightmare. Sakinaka.
I mean, that became a joke in the middle, right? That the Teri Maka Sakinaka became a joke in the middle.
Yeah.
That was very popular one.
There you go. Yeah. He's also a stand-up comedian, looking for work if you're doing anything on comedians. Yeah.
I mean,
go ahead.
Ask him anything. I have a question. Siddharth, how do you go about designing the marketing of a film? Because you have had a great track record with the films that you've made. How do you design the marketing? Is it just dependent on the budget of the marketing? Is it just dependent on the stars that are involved in the film? Or our campaigns can be like variedly different? Can they be like highly different? How does it
So I had to unlearn a lot of marketing stuff that I learned earlier, right? Because I'll just give you an example. A soap is a commodity. You can put any brand onto it that you believe that it should embody because it's irrelevant. It's a product, right?
Oh, that's so sad. I mean, they work so hard. You just said, kuch bhi kar sakta hai yaar. Meeting mat karo. Just write whatever you think.
It's that much harder because it's a green soap and suddenly you say it's about freshness and it's under a waterfall and it's a beautiful, and that's what Liril stands for, but it's a green curry soap. But a movie is a living, breathing thing on its own, right? So marketers have to take a step back and realize, listen, we've got to be informed by what the content is rather than what we'd like to layer it with. So you really need to be informed by the content and then drive your campaign accordingly. So, and the trick is not to fool, because a lot of people just end up fooling you in the trailer and then the audience gets damn pissed.
Correct. I mean, for generations, the film, how many times we've come out saying the trailer was so good and what have we gone through? And then now I think with the OTT crowd, the internet crowd, if you will, I mean, you can't do that because, they're just straight up about everything.
Useless.
And that's why also, I think go on.
Also, when some particular like famous star, right, will just have a cameo in the film, but they'll show him like prominently in the trailer. That's going to be like a dicey project to follow.
No, the audience is not damn smart. They know that Salman has got a 10-minute role. When they see the trailer only and he's in half of it.
Exactly.
They know it's all bullshit. He's there for 10 minutes. We can tell, So
exactly.
But I think, again, with this subject, they've not tried. They're not sugarcoating anything. It is about two famous scientists. That is the story. But then you forget about that. It's human. It's a human story again. They just happen to be scientists. And it's their partnership and relationship. For me, that drama is always the most fun. Yeah, but I must say, I'm looking forward to this show. I think this show is going to be great. I just love the idea you take people and just humanize them and show us their relationship because that's all we need to know. I think that's where inspiration comes from in the end, when people really relate to who the person is. So I think that's superb. Go on, Silvery, AMAs?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I have one more question before that. Siddharth, being the president of the Producers Guild of India, there was recently something that happened in a Hollywood film shoot in Mexico where Alec Baldwin ended up
Rust.
On Rust, he ended up shooting someone. And then since then there has been talk about safety practices becoming better, like the need of them becoming better on Indian sets. So just want to talk about how do we address that going forward and what needs to be changed, etc.
And do we have a bad name in that sense in terms of safety? I'm not saying across the board.
In the past, you've had you've had deaths that have occurred on film sets, and that happens around the world, unfortunately. The way to address it, number one, is that there's a bare minimum of safety measures that have to be taken, which I think every certified stunt master or action director today takes those precautions and ensures that they do. The second is obviously production houses taking insurance for everyone on set who's putting themselves in a precarious situation. So those are a few things that producers do. Is it possible for us to do more? I'm sure there is. And, that's something that everyone keeps working on. But the fact is that commercial realities also dictate how much one can do and how much one can't, because you need to take everyone along with you when you're putting these, plans together. And there are some producers who maybe are not that well equipped to be able to fund things that, we would like them to. But the bare minimum of ensuring safety and taking out insurance is done.
I don't want to make, disrespect what happened with the Alec Baldwin incident. But I'm just thinking the next guy in Hollywood who is shooting a film with a gun, I'm just trying to think the moment he points the gun at, whoever, the other actor is going to be, man, I'm out of here. No money in the world is worth this.
Yeah.
It's going to take some time to digest.
I was listening to George Clooney talk about that incident, and he was talking about that he does, apparently he's been doing this for years now, for almost a decade, so he was very good friends with Brendan Lee, the actor, Bruce Lee's son, who had died, right, on the set previously. So George Clooney, he's like, so what I do is whenever I'm pointing a gun at someone on set, right, I open the gun, show it to the person I'm pointing it to, show it to everyone else then on set. The person who gave me the gun saying it's a cold gun, I open it and show it to him also, and just do that like at least 2 or 3 times before we actually do the take.
That's if it's a cold 6-shooter, but there are certain guns you can't really open, feather touch guns and all. I don't know what gun was using Russ, but
could be.
That was the whole problem, is that, it wasn't feather touch.
And he was told it's a cold gun. I mean, when they handed him the gun, they said cold gun. As per whatever.
Yeah, that's what, exactly.
So they had crossed all the T's and dotted all their I's and all that going into it. It's a really freakish thing, but man, at the end of the day, you should not, somebody dies, it's just ridiculous.
Crazy.
It probably wasn't going to be a great film either. It was a Western called Rust, shot with low budget in the middle of nowhere.
Also, they had production issues already. They had the crew going on strike. So
Fighting,
a dicey set.
So are you saying there could be something in it, as in,
Who knows? Because, the fact is that it was a disgruntled crew. So, that could mean anything.
But you're killing the cinematographer, which is not the power base in the sense of who's deciding whether you work or not, or the conditions, the COVID conditions, etc.
This is just sort of conjecture, but there's no logic to these things sometimes, right? You're pissed off, you just say, I'm going to do this now. You don't know who it's going to affect and how, but you do something random in the heat of the moment.
But I like your thinking. The producer's off the hook. Just sorry, let's don't make jokes. All right, let's take the AMAs.
We have Siddharth for only a few minutes more, so we'll just get to one AMA question if that's fine. Sure. Sharan Gupta has sent in an AMA. He has said, "Hi Cyrus and dear guest, massive fan here, Cyrus." He says, "Tare Zameen Par and Three Idiots are 2 movies for me which leave me with something a little more each time I watch them. Maybe I noticed something that I hadn't previously, or I appreciate a line more that I had missed the last time, or something else about the movie hits me at a level that it hadn't before. Do you guys have movies like this in your life? Movies that are a treasure trove for you, both creatively and personally?"
So like a Shakespearean quality where you watch it again and learn
watch it again and
new.
again and layers and
let the master speak. He's the master. Is there on a personal level?
On a personal level, something that teaches you something. I can't think of anything of that. It's more about entertainment really for me. So I think a movie like Sholay, I can just watch endlessly and just because it's got all the tropes of Hindi commercial cinema in such a authentic and fun way that that's a film I go back to every few months and watch.
It's got super moments, no matter Hindi cinema or not. There are definitely some great moments in the film. And who hasn't drunk themselves silly and got on a motorbike and driven around singing, "Never do that, never drink and drive." Never. Siddharth, please tell them not to do these things. It's ridiculous. All right. So apparently you've got to go, Siddharth. So we have to cut it short. Wish we had you a little longer. I'm sure people would love to ask more questions and send you their biodatas as well. But it's been a heck of a career and it's not even halfway done. So looking forward to all the stuff that's going to come out of the Roy Kapur stables. Oh, by the way, last question. Do Kunal and Aditya get to act in the Roy Kapur films, or how does that work?
So we've got a family pact that we all don't work together. So Vidya, Kunal, Aditya and I don't work together.
All three brothers want this, or one of the three brothers?
All three. It's just healthier.
There's no hope for the country when the three brothers of blood can't come together. I mean, there's no point. Hey, what are we expecting? Yeah, fair enough. Okay, cheers, man, and we're all looking forward.
Thank you so
Again, it's just give us the link again. February 4th, Rocket
Feb
Boys
4th on Sony Liv.
on Sony Liv. Check it out. The story of two great men. All right, cheers. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.